apologize. We're busy talking with Tom and talking with all kinds of folks out there that I haven't seen in a long time. Call the meeting order. Please take the roll.
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll for Mr. Schron.
Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent. Ms. Stevens. Ms. Stevens is absent. Mr. Byrne.
Here.
You have a quorum. And let the record reflect that Councilmember Miller is also in attendance.
Thank you. Is there any public comment to come before us?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
Okay. Can we have approval of the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
So
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the minutes has been submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the minutes have been approved. We have one item to come before the council. If you could please read this in the record.
Resolution 2024-0079, authorizing a pre-development economic development recoverable grant in an amount not to exceed $450,000 to Blue Abyss Operations Incorporated for the Blue Abyss project located on 12 acres on Aerospace Parkway in the city of Brook Park for the purpose of constructing the main astronaut and deep water training facility, a hotel, planetarium, and a long-arm centrifuge building totaling approximately 300,000 square feet.
Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of this project?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Vaughn Johnson, Department of Development.
Before you get started,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Johnson, this hearing was supposed to be presented, not that you're not a great speaker and everything like that, on behalf of the head of the department. Just can you give a little background without going into personal details?
Sure. This was originally going to be presented by the Department of Development Director, Paul Herdig, and he couldn't be here this afternoon. So
Okay.
I'm going to be presenting the project.
My understanding is some personal reasons that we don't want to go into on the record.
That's correct.
Okay, and so as a result, I don't want anybody thinking that the director is shunning this event by not being here at this time. So I just want to make sure everybody understands, because the expectation was that the director, not that you can't do a qualified job, but I just, I didn't want anybody surprised as to why the director was not here to present this.
And you didn't want anyone to think I was Paul Herdig either, right?
Well,
All right.
please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm here to discuss the Blue Abyss project to be located in Brook Park, Ohio, on 12 acres along Aerospace Parkway. The Department of Development is proposing a pre-development recoverable grant of $450,000 to Blue Abyss Operations, Inc. for the purpose of constructing the main astronaut and deep water training facility, a hotel, planetarium, and a long-arm centrifuge building totaling approximately 300,000 square feet. The project is anticipated to create 200 new jobs with a total project cost of approximately $250 million. That breaks down to approximately $40 million for the hotel, and 85,000 square feet is for the main facility, and 110,000 square feet is for the hotel. The project is expected to start construction in late 2023 and be completed in late 2026.
Okay, just based on your, I don't mean ordinarily cut people off, but you said late 2023. That's.
I'm sorry.
That'd be really late, because I've already missed that date.
Let me try that again. I apologize. The project is scheduled to start in the third quarter of 2024.
Okay.
And then be completed in the late 2026.
Please continue.
Sure. Now, development believes this is can be a catalytic project. We also know that there are some risks associated with this. And the Department of Development reached out to a third party to do a review of this project and substantiate the recoverable grant. And also to help mitigate those risks of the recoverable grant, it will be secured by a second position on the lien of real property where Blue Abyss project is located. The recoverable grant will be repayable in full if Blue Abyss project is not substantially completed as planned. The recoverable grant is subject to other terms and conditions that the Department of Development deems are needed to ensure the funds are used for their intended pre-development purposes. And also, the grant will be distributed as needed for the project and not in one lump sum. And with that, I wanted to bring up Mr. Mark Drew from Blue Abyss, who's going to give significantly more detail on the project.
Okay, before we get to the project, let's look
Yes,
at, the county is the one who's funding this, so let's talk about the financing, the funding of that. Any questions from anybody in regards to the financing package and how it's going to work?
Through the chair, yes, Mr. Strawn, just I'm not familiar with this grant, Mr. Johnson. So
Yes.
it says the recoverable grant will be payable in full if the project is not substantially completed.
Correct.
How is that determined if it's substantially completed or not?
I would like to believe that that is at the discretion of the Department of Development. There's a timeline for the project to be completed, which is between those 2024 and 2026. And if there's not substantial progress towards that project, then we have the right to exercise our options on that.
So I guess to be more specific, through your department, they make the determination.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? Anybody else? Finally got Mr. Burns a question. Substantial, completed, that sounds like language that's pretty broad. Do we have any, are we going to get an explanation from yourself or perhaps from the person from the Blue Abyss when he talks about this?
I believe Mr. Drew will have a little bit more information on that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And what's the interest rate that we will be getting on this?
It's a recoverable grant. So,
Okay.
So there is no interest rate.
But I assume that someplace along the way, if we haven't hit substantial completion, but we have not gotten to the point where we want to recover a grant, is this does not move into some kind of a loan problem or issues where we start recovering our money in that interim period of time?
Well, if there is interest that would be applied to this, it would be under our current rate, which is 5.5%.
Okay, and because what happens when you use words like substantially completed, they're kind of vague. So as I think my colleague was trying to point out. So with that, if the project then gets moved, as we have seen for the, sadly, our wind turbine project, we were going to almost language similar to this, and it got moved. Our money never went into investing in that, but that project went on for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and we're not close to substantially completing that project. Fortunately, we didn't have any funds there. We ended up putting the money down into the solar panels, so we had the option to put it in either one of those places. So I'm just trying to identify if we don't hit this. I think you indicated it's 2026 is when the project should go live.
That's correct.
Okay, so I would think that a date subsequent to 2026, if it's not live, would fall in the category of not substantially completed.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, you're confirming a question that I'm just not sure that we have clarity on. So any of my questions result in any questions about the financing package in regards to it before we get into the actual project for anybody? Hearing none. And Mr. Miller, you as a guest to this committee are certainly welcome to chime in also.
So, Mr. Chairman, and to my colleagues, first of all, thank you very much for hearing this project, and this is probably the largest and most exciting project to be considered for development in any district that I've represented over the 40 years that I've been in public service. The world of space exploration is changing in a big way, and it's moving from being done by governments to being done by the private sector, and you can't send any astronauts into space unless they're properly trained, and this is going to provide training facilities that can be used by companies all over the world, and can also be used for training for deep water research, which is also a growing business, and so I'm excited about this project and believe it would contribute greatly to building on what we have in terms of the airport and NASA Glenn Research Center in Greater Cleveland, and encourage your favorable consideration. Thank you.
And I appreciate that. You're, as chairman of the Finance and Budget Committee, are who we look to for Mr. Numbers. And so my question was whether or not you saw anything or heard anything in regards to the county executive's department as far as presentation of the financing of the package.
Mr. Chairman, to my colleagues, this is not a project that's without risk. This is a new and difficult undertaking, and it's not typical for the county to be involved at the pre-development stage, but our intention is to give the project a catalytic boost at a critical time that's necessary for them to bring the following stages to completion and put a full financing package together. I believe that the second position loan gives us the capability to recover these funds if the project doesn't go forward as intended. And my understanding is that the property is worth substantially more than what it was acquired for, and this increases its value as an asset that can be leaned against. So I think that we're in pretty good shape. I think it's a reasonable risk considering the tremendous benefit that would occur if this project is successful.
Okay. I just want to make sure that you had a chance to speak on behalf, because you're our expert on finances and budgeting from the county standpoint, which is where these funds are going to come from. Who has first position on this? Vaughn?
I'm going to ask Mr. Drew if you have the term
Okay,
sheet.
well, all right. So
Okay.
if I'm asking questions that you're not going to be able to do, that's fine. I just want to make sure I understand what the capital stack is, who's involved in it, where we are. I mean, to be second position if first position is capable of absorbing all of the funds, then second position doesn't have much value to it. If there's going to be some amount of owner equity going in, then second position obviously does have a benefit. And if you're talking about, I think you indicated it was $250 million. I don't know where that our amount is pretty small compared to, I think, the size of a project of that nature. So I want to find out, and Mr. Drew, I'll ask him those questions. And if you're not able, then the question is to, are we second in the hotel? Are we second in the property? Are we second in where we are? So if you can maybe find that out before we finish this up as far as where we are, because I can only assume that the capital stack is going to break up into multiple different organizations, not just it's not going to all be under single ownership. So with that, is there, if you can, before you leave, we hope you can look at and find out where we are in the documents and verify that. Is there, who is next then to present? Oh, okay.
Mr.
Now we have, they keep deferring all the questions to you, Mr. Drew. So if you can please take the microphone and put your name on the record, I'd appreciate that. And then go through and tell us about this exciting project.
Okay. Yeah, so Mark Drew, Chief Operating Officer, Blue Abyss. So I think just before I get into a quick overview of the presentation, just for a clarification question, substantially completed is a kind of industry term, and that's usually backed up by an occupancy certificate. So
Yep.
there is a way to clarify in the term sheet what substantially completed means.
Okay.
Okay.
And that, so that, is that Is there a definition of that right now, Mr. Drew, as far as?
Have we put it in the term sheet? No,
Yep.
but we
Okay.
certainly can. I'm sure that's something we can amend into the terms.
Great, so it'll be no.
So there's no ambiguity, so
No.
it's clear.
When you, now, $450,000 is a lot of money, but it's not in relationship to the whole thing. It's, obviously, it's not a significant portion of the total stack. Can we get the clicker? Let's see. There we go.
Great. So the order of proceedings this afternoon is I'm going to give you a fairly quick run through what Blue Abyss is all about, just so that you're clear in your minds as to what the project encompasses. Talk about the markets that we serve. Talk about why this is a globally unique facility. And then I will hand over to Paul Marnichek from the City of Brook Park, who will run through the economic benefits. We've commissioned a study by the Kent State University, so he is going to talk you through what it means for Brook Park, the county, the City of Cleveland, and even the state of Ohio. And then finally, Tom Chemmer is going to conclude in terms of the use of funds for the $450,000 grant, so that you can understand how they link to progressing the project through its next phases. So I think, first of all, you can see an image on the screen. That is a mock-up of the main aquatic facility, which you can see there is a very large pool, 50 meters long, 40 meters wide. It has multiple depths going down to 50 meters. The volume of water is some 42,000 cubic meters. To give you some sense of scale, that's 17 times the volume of an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So it's a very large body of water. You can see there some of the use cases. So you can see in the left, there's a mock-up of a space station module, which we intend to put in the pool. So some of the use cases in that scenario is for practicing spacewalks. Use the neutral buoyancy of water to simulate zero gravity. Having the infrastructure in the pool allows the astronauts to train for specific EVA missions. So that's just some examples of what we use the pool for. So the overall center in Brook Park, it will be a campus. So it has a number of elements to it. Obviously, I've given you an overview of the size of the aquatic center. That's the main part of the complex. But it will also have a long-arm centrifuge, which is used to simulate the G-forces associated with takeoff for astronauts. There will be what is called a parabolic flight capability. So that is where you take a normal passenger airplane. You do some modifications, take some seats out in the middle, you put some padding in the inside, and then you fly that airplane through a series of parabolas. So it's a very steep climb, and then when you get to the very top of the climb, you get about 20 seconds of simulated zero gravity. Okay, and you use that for two main use cases. One, again, is training astronauts, because that is the way you can simulate them getting used to zero gravity, so they can learn how to move around. You also has an important use case for experimentation. If you saw in the news, I think just a couple of days ago, the next 4 astronauts have gone up into the International Space Station, and they will be, I think they've got 200 experiments to run while they're there. So, but how do you know your experiment's going to work in space? Because things behave differently under zero gravity. So parabolic flight provides a way for research institutions, NASA, to take their experiments and then make sure they're going to work when they get to actually get up into the International Space Station. So it has a research element to it, as well as being for training astronauts. We will have R&D labs in the facility, and I will talk a little bit about some of our early research partners and how we're bringing together both clinical and research institutions into the Blue Abyss plans. And then finally, there will be a hotel, 150 to 180 seats, beds, a hotel, for a number of reasons, really. I think, one, we anticipate that there will be people who are staying with us for potentially weeks at a time. The facility, given it's an expensive asset, we will be working that 24/7. So we'll be operating on a shift basis. So if someone is coming out after doing some shift work at 2 in the morning, then obviously we have a hotel right there for them. And then the third reason for having a hotel on site is there is an opportunity and part of our plan aside from being a sort of an industrial commercial facility, we have the opportunity to provide experiential space courses. So if you like space tourism. So if you don't want to go into space, you can come to Blue Abyss and you can go onto the long arm centrifuge. So you can simulate what it feels like to take off. You can go on a parabolic flight and you can feel, you get to experience what it's like to be weightless. And then finally, you can go into the pool and experience what it's like to do a spacewalk in a simulated spacesuit. So we feel there's an additional revenue opportunity by bringing all those elements together, and clearly having a boutique-style hotel as part of the campus will be is required. And then the final piece that's not on there is there will also be a planetarium that we will build on site. That is, again, to sort of integrate into what we do from a learning point of view, but more importantly, the ability to incorporate academic outreach into the local community. So, that's already part of our thinking, that we want to ensure we inspire the next generation of students to consider space, aerospace, robotic technology as a career path that is rewarding. So those are the elements of the facility itself. I think this slide is just to, again, reinforce what I've said. While space clearly gets a lot of attention in terms of the market we're looking to serve, it's probably the largest market for our facility here in Cleveland, given the proximity to NASA Glenn and the fact that the US is the home for all real commercial space activities. But I've talked about subsea, which is again a key market of ours, and I will show you just some of the market sizes. Defense, there are opportunities in the defense world for supporting mission training, technology, underwater technology development, testing. We see some opportunities in human performance. There are a lot of learnings that happen in terms of how you manage astronauts, both in terms of their training, because they're going into extreme environments. So there are learnings that you can read across into sort of into the terrestrial world from how you manage human performance for astronauts. And there is opportunities from a clinical point of view. Things like astronauts, when they go into space, they have sort of osteoporosis at 7 times the rate that you see on Earth. So how you manage those conditions and how you treat them have potential read across from a terrestrial medicine, which is, again, why we've got some research and university partners that will be part of our activities here in Cleveland. Just talking a little bit about space, just to give you some idea how the different markets break down. You have orbital space, which is really where NASA and your commercial astronauts will be operating. But then you have suborbital as a market, which is things like Virgin Galactic, where they're taking people up into lower into suborbital. We are expecting a expression of support, letter of intent from Virgin Galactic already, so they're very keen on a capability that we're building, particularly parabolic flight. So that's another that's another market, and then much further beyond, you've got obviously the intention to establish lunar habitats. So a number of different markets in the space. And then from a subsea point of view, these again, the marine market is very, very large. You can see on the screen there some of the individual markets that we will serve that relate to development of technology, be that underwater autonomous vehicles, robotics, or even from a defense market in terms of their requirements for underwater technology. So just to give you some sense of scale in terms of those individual markets. So multi-sector. I think the other points I wanted to make, it is a unique global capability. There isn't anywhere else like it that we can see. This is giving you an idea of capabilities for astronaut training. NASA have their NBL down in Houston, but that's obviously a government-owned facility. There are other companies that can provide some aspects for astronaut training, but in terms of the capability that we will have here in Cleveland, so the ability to take an astronaut and put them through the long-arm centrifuge so they can experience the high G-forces the next day put them onto the parabolic flight, so they then experience very quickly the zero gravity. You know, the ability to then put them into the pool so they can start and experience doing spacewalks. That will be a unique global capability. And similarly, when you look around from a subsea sort of perspective, aquatic perspective, again, this will be a globally unique facility. We've looked at places, you know, across the US, across Europe, across the rest of the world, you know, and we again see this as being a unique commercial capability that is will not have anything comparable anywhere else. And then I think just to sort of paint a bit more of the picture in terms of how we intend to sort of integrate into the Cleveland, Ohio academic partners, the research side. These are some of the institutions that we've already started to work with, where we've got MOUs, and we're starting to try and understand what are the opportunities for us to collaborate on a research and development perspective. Equally, you know, with people like university hospitals on the clinical side, we've already had a number of exchanges where we're trying to drill down into areas where we could collaborate from a research and development point of view. NASA, I would say NASA, we have a Space Act agreement that we are aiming to conclude in the next month. So we are well engaged with NASA on this project, and we have tremendous support from them. So that's just giving you an overview of what is in the facility. It's talked about, you know, the markets that we're going to serve. We anticipate that there will be some 18,000 visitors a year will come to this. Will come to the facility, and Paul will talk a bit about some of those economic benefits. But it is, you know, aside from the industrial commercial use, we will make the facility available at weekends, you know, on a number of occasions, so that we can open it up to community use. It's not a swimming pool. It's not heated. Okay, you can't show up in your swimsuit and jump in. You know, as I said, it's a commercial industrial facility, but for things like scuba diving and for things like free diving, then we will have specific sessions scheduled into our operation, so that the facility, as I said, not just the planetarium, but from a recreational use, you know, we want to make that that available to the local community. So I think we're looking to integrate into the area through a number of different ways, aside from being a unique piece of national infrastructure that can support all those markets. You know, there's the academic research side, we've got the STEM outreach, and we've got the local community engagement through sort of recreational activities. So hopefully that's given you a good overview of the facility, what we're aiming to do, and how we're looking to be an integral part of the Brook Park and the county's business community.
Thank you. Okay, members of the committee, questions? And guests, you're welcome to join in on this after the committee. Any questions from any of the committee members? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see it says that ground testing is completed. Was there any remediation needed in that area?
No, we did. I think it was 6. I think there were 6 samples that we took. We drilled down to, was it 200 feet? 200 feet. We went down 200 feet to test the rock, and there's nothing untoward that requires any sort of remediation.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other committee questions? Mr. Miller, do you have any questions? Okay, having none. Okay, so as chairman, I'll ask a few. First, obviously the slides must have been made over in the UK, overseas.
Yeah, I'm from the UK, yes. So perhaps
Well, the slide, because having just come back from India, I asked the very same question. The word defense is spelled with a C as opposed to an S, if anybody picked that up. And that's an indication of where the slides must have been prepared from that standpoint, which is nothing bad or good. But following on that, you mentioned on one of the slides, defense. Is there funding from any Department of Defense in the United States or any other defense departments outside the United States in this project?
So in this project, the engagement that we've had so far with the defense community, we've had some preliminary conversations with the Air Force Research Laboratory, and that's more about making sure we capture potentially some of their requirements in how we design the facility. So there are early conversations. We've had initial conversations with NAMRU at Dayton in terms of CRADA, so for some research collaboration, but we have not got any direct funding from the DoD as yet. We have yet to engage with the Department of Defense in a meaningful way. Some of the money from this from the grant will be used to support furthering our engagement with the Department of Defense as part of our sort of marketing spend.
And Wright-Patterson is not?
We've had some early conversations with Wright-Patterson as well.
Okay, so it would just seem to me that would make sense if the word defense is in your program, whether it's a C or an S, it doesn't make any difference to me from that standpoint. How about SpaceX? Are they involved in this at all?
So we've, SpaceX, I mean, at the moment, are primarily a launch capability. So in terms of the space companies that we have focused on initially are those that are building the replacement space stations. So NASA has issued contracts to a number of different commercial companies who are looking to build the replacement space for the International Space Station. That comes to the end of its useful life in around 2030. It might get extended by a couple of years. But NASA have awarded contracts to Axiom Space, who are based down in Houston. They are looking to build a commercial space station. They've awarded contracts to Sierra Space in partnership with Blue Origin. They've awarded contracts to Starlab, which is a consortium between Airbus and Voyager Space, and they've also issued a contract to Lockheed Martin. So they're the four companies that are looking to build commercial space stations. We have engaged with all four of those companies. Say Sierra Space, we have an expression of support, written expression of support. Axiom Space, we are in conversations with them about what capability they want to see in the pool. We are expecting a similar written expression of support from Airbus and Voyager, Starlab. And we have started our conversations with Lockheed Martin. On the European side, there's also Thales Alenia. They're another company that's involved in making commercial space stations. And again, we have an ongoing dialogue with them, both in terms of obtaining written support and also from understanding, making sure their requirements are built into the pool design. So I think in terms of reaching out to the key commercial space companies, then we believe we've covered most of those.
Okay, but SpaceX is not on it doesn't sound like it in here in your list. And the reason why I just have to ask personally these questions only because we do business with SpaceX. And
so yeah, SpaceX at the moment are focused on launch vehicles,
right?
And so therefore we're talking to the companies that will be building space stations, and because obviously that's where you have the demand for training astronauts and human spaceflight.
Okay, and the only reason I do that is because I want to put it on the record, because in case my ethics folks upstairs are looking at how am I going to vote on an issue, I want to make sure that they don't think that I'm.
I mean, at some point we would want to speak to SpaceX.
It's fine.
But yeah.
Today when I'm voting, you're not, so that's why I want to get a complete clarity on it, because they're part of our customer base out there. Why Cleveland? We all love Cleveland, but why would this project, when all those brand names you're talking about? I know that NASA, Glenn, is a big proponent, but so is Alabama, so is all these other places that always seem to take our business away.
So I think why Cleveland? I mean, our CEO came here back in September 22, with obviously a view that we might be somewhere else in the US, but I think he was convinced by a number of things. Obviously, we need proximity to an airport for parabolic flight. So and NASA Glenn being on the airport. So there's geographically there was that was a piece of it. But I think broadly, I think he came to Cleveland and was impressed with the passion that the different institutions in Cleveland who are involved in economic development. He saw the Ohio Aerospace Institute and liked how that sort of integrated the aerospace community. Obviously, he spoke to Jobs Ohio, ODOD. He's a whole breadth of individuals, and was convinced that the way that sort of Cleveland integrates its economic development, it was the right place for us to set up shop.
Well, we're pleased that was the the result of your, because I can only imagine you looked at other places with that?
Well, it was before my time, but in another job, and the reason why I kind of met John Vickers, I was looking to bring or set up a manufacturing plant for a company that was based in India, actually. And so I went to a number of different states, including Ohio. So I've obviously had prior to joining Blue Abyss, I had a previous experience of talking to other states and their economic development teams, and I have seen for myself the different approaches, and certainly Ohio stands out, certainly in terms of the experiences I've had in other places.
Well, we're a state and a county and a city that kind of rolls up their sleeves, not afraid to get our fingernails dirty and make stuff out here, because we are the largest provider of aerospace parts in the entire
Indeed,
world.
yes.
People don't or the United States. People don't realize that. They always think of the West Coast
Yeah.
and Boeing and St. Louis and places like that. And they make the aircraft, but we make the parts here. About the hotel, you indicate there's a hotel that's going to be attached to this. Is it going to be part of the whole complex?
Yes, it will be part of the complex, yes.
Is it? I would think as a business guy, it would be sitting as a separate asset, not necessarily into this capital stack. Is that?
So, I mean, there are a number of options in terms of how we finance the hotel. At the moment, we're working on the basis that we should be looking to raise all the capital stack. But yes, it will operate as a separate. There will be a separate entity for its operation. If we build it, undoubtedly there will be some partner that will operate that on our behalf.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes, you are correct in that there will be some separate entity to manage the P&L balance sheet and et cetera for the hotel.
Because this body, our responsibility is to look at the taxpayers' money. It's also to cheer you on and hope it's a big success. But when we sit in second position, I can only assume that the hotel would not be part of that second position.
So no, this stage we've not commenced any fundraising for the hotel. We have a number of interested parties who are keen to explore with us options about how we develop the hotel, but we have not really got into any substantial detail as yet.
Okay, so that's part of the vision of the project, but it's not part of where we would be sitting with the taxpayers' money
no,
in the
no.
capital stack. Ours is going to be only
the main
in-
facility.
In the main facility.
Correct.
Okay, and the main facility should, God forbid, and it won't happen, something bad happens with the financing, that would be where we would look to get the taxpayers' money back.
Yeah, the commercial value of the land is somewhere around about $5 million. We purchased it for $780,000, and we have a $1 million mortgage on the land. So there is plenty of equity value in the land to cover the obligations that we have and the additional one from the county.
Okay, and at what point does this move from being a grant to the recoverable portion goes away and the funds have now been fully accepted as far as that substantial completion, do you believe? Is that a year, 6 months? And without trying to get to the definition of what it was.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think in terms of the broad plan for this year is to complete the capital raise, the full capital stack, so that we can start construction before the end of the year. I mean, that's our kind of broad timeline. There are a number of different elements to the capital stack, which we can certainly share if that's required, so you can understand the sequencing and what goes into the full capital stack. But our focus for the next 9 months is to complete those activities from a fundraising point of view. From a grant perspective, there are obviously activities we need to enable that, which Mr. Chairman will talk through in terms of the uses of funds. We've got concept design work to do in order that we can then update our costs for the facility. Those costs are obviously required by a number of institutions to support some of our requests for financing, things like PACE loans. We've got some indicative commitments on the value of that funding, but in order for them to really firm that up and issue a term sheet, then we obviously need we would need a more detailed cost breakdown, which would come out of the work that we would initiate from the county funds.
Yeah.
So there's linkages, from this in terms of how we then enable those other pieces of the capital stack to progress at the pace that we would like.
And part of the reason that, Mr. Drew, we're asking these questions, this is the first time we've ever been asked in the 13 years of the new county government to be on the front end of this. We're usually last dollar in to complete a transaction or some other position that falls in later in the financing.
And I think we're hugely appreciative of that. We are hugely appreciative of the support that you're providing and willing to look at this. I think you're not quite first money in. I mean, there's circa $1 million of equity gone in from the parent company, and obviously we have $1 million of loans from a family office that's provided the initial funding to date.
Okay, well, and I can only assume that there's got to be a number of people with the number one in the stack eventually at that point in time, and then there'll probably be a whole bunch of us sitting in the second position, I would think, unless we're standing alone. I'd love to be second for a little teeny amount of that total to be second position, but I would think somebody's going to be also asking to sit there too. Any vision about how we? Again, our job is to look at the taxpayers' money and to cheer on a project.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll have second position, I guess, until we agree otherwise. So I think that's that's one I guess one point. I mean, I think from our point of view, we will want this. We will make this project happen.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, this is going to be a grant, and it's going to go into the project, and by 2026, it'll be a moot point because we'll all be part of that, what is it, that 50 feet or 50 meter deep pool in someplace, and that will be our $450,000, which we can say, hey, we made a contribution to change society, and I think it would be a good thing. But my questions always have to come first from the taxpayer standpoint, and then digging into the project itself. The tourists themselves, is that something you really envision that will take place as far as tourists being to come to town and
yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, I don't think that's we've baked some of that into our business model. It's not our main source of revenue, but we certainly believe that there is a unique opportunity. There are companies out there today that do something similar, but at a much smaller scale, where they have a hotel and they have a smaller parabolic flight and they offer high net worth individuals that sort of experience, but not to the same scope or size that we envisage. So yes, absolutely. We definitely believe that there is a tourism opportunity, in terms of the whole experience. We know there is a small opportunity even for tourism for parabolic flight. Right? People want to go on a plane and experience being weightless. There are companies that have been out there in the market doing that. They're not operating at the moment, right, for a number of reasons. So there's a gap in the market, and we know the market's there, and hence we're keen to move as quickly as possible to take that opportunity. So yeah, absolutely, the tourism piece is not something that we've added on. It's well thought through, and I think we've got a good, clear idea of what we would offer, what its value would be, how we would take that to market, what the price points would be. So it's a real thing.
Seems like an attractive place for Disney to extend a hotel brand similar to what they did.
Well, that's and again, coming back to some of the uses of the county money, then one of those uses is to complete a market study. To do a number of things. One is just to provide some underwriting of some of our assumptions on revenue from different sources. But the company that we will use, Superlative, one of their specialisms is to identify all the branding opportunities we would have with a project like this, whether that's naming rights, even whether we should incorporate, some have a collaboration with a company in terms of how we built the thing. So they are one of the kind of leading experts in identifying brand partnership opportunities across a whole wide range of areas. So absolutely, brand association is something that we will be pursuing.
Yeah, there's always the question: is the last dollar the important one, or is the first dollar the important one in a project of this nature? And one might argue that first dollars are as important as that last dollar.
I would,
completes the
yes,
step.
100%. So, Chair, I'm Chairman. I would say 100%. The first dollars are the most important. Yeah.
Well, and then I hope our team is actually talking about the branding and naming places that potentially the county could get some recognition, because what it does, I envision that this could be a catalyst for economic development for the entire county. If we look like we're the kind of county that's willing to invest in risk-taking, and then see this as a growth opportunity, it could be a drawing card because.
Yeah, and I won't steal some of Paul's thunder. I mean, I'll let him talk a little bit about, I think, some of the implications, but I think some of the benefits from NASA point of view, in terms of how the facility can enable, I think, more research and development. NASA certainly see that as being a vehicle to encourage, Blue Abyss being a vehicle that can help them create a bigger commercial ecosystem around them and in the Cleveland area. Not that there isn't one today, but that, I think they would very much like that to be bigger than it is. So I think there are some other benefits that NASA and the City of Brook Park see, where we can be a catalyst for not just the economic benefits that we create directly, but how do we then create this sort of bigger ecosystem, say R&D companies, potentially from additional, recreational restaurants, etc. But I mean, certainly the academic side and how we can bring more companies into the area is one of those areas that we see as a benefit. And I think, speaking for
I think there's a
NASA,
potential to stimulate some manufacturing components of it, of which this county is invested in and sees this as the growth, and clearly manufacturing is the #1 contributor to GDP in Northeast Ohio. It far exceeds the medical, and people don't realize that, but it's at least $20 billion bigger than the medical community as far as its GDP. The 2,200 jobs that you talked about, is that the hotel jobs, or is this strictly the Blue Abyss?
So the jobs for the Blue Abyss facility and for the hotel will come to about 200. There's
Right.
200 jobs, yeah.
Okay,
so
we can get into that. We'll peel if we get further into it. How many of the are Blue Abyss jobs? And that's what I was going to go back to you.
So in terms of running the facility, we envisage about 130, 140 people, yeah. And they would be, I think the average salary we've calculated was just under $100,000, because you're talking about, scientists potentially. We need quite a big team of scuba divers who can support the operations in the pool. You've got some fairly complex maintenance operations, research and development. So it's definitely biased towards more skilled jobs to operate and run the facility in an effective way.
I bet. Any questions from as a result of the chair's questions? Are we opening any thoughts or questions? Oh, well, I guess that's the chip I drew on this table. Last meeting, Mike, the finance was headed up by.
So I have a question.
Sure.
As regards the main facility, how do you expect your revenue base to divide between private sector contracts and government?
I mean, I think overall we're expecting that the majority of our revenue will come from private sector. Right? I mean, our business case is not to assume that NASA just give us, 80% of our revenues. Not far from it. We've had those conversations with NASA. So we expect the majority of those revenues to come from, commercial private players. Yes, we would see there being, DoD and some NASA revenues, but I mean we're working on the basis that our primary markets are going to be the commercial companies.
And Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Drew, do you expect that any governments outside of the U.S. would use the facilities?
Would any governments use the facilities? I mean, if you talk about it, I think it depends on the markets. I mean, clearly, astronauts are going to be, come from different places in the world, right? So I think individually, they may be astronauts from other places of the world. who would be paying the bill? I think that would be a US company, for example, Axiom Space, Sierra Space. They would be the contracting party, but they may well have an astronaut from, from another part of the world. So I think, that's how we see most of that playing out.
Okay, thank you.
And based on Councilman Miller, is the primary customer base going to have an astronaut component to it as opposed to just a satellite that would get launched or anything of that nature? Is that?
Yeah, so I mean, our primary markets in terms of space is human spaceflight, so training astronauts, and then the secondary use would be in relation to putting a new space station. So when NASA built the International Space Station, they did a huge amount of simulations in the neutral buoyancy facility, because I say when you're starting to build things, right, and assemble things, it's fine if you have a wrench on Earth, you've got gravity, right? In space, doesn't work that way. So they had to do an awful lot of mock-ups, simulations, practices in terms of how that space station went together successfully whenever they did that. So we also anticipate that as people start to get towards, putting up space stations and to replace the ISS in 2030, at that time, then there will also be a lot of requirement to simulate how those space stations would be assembled and operate before they actually go up.
Yeah, last weekend I was in India and had a chance to talk with some folks that the Indian development is actually moving. They have their version of Elon Musk over there also, who has already put together his private rocket and manned space program over there too.
Yeah.
So with that,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
To Mr. Drew, are you expecting the new space station to be about the same size or smaller or larger than the existing one? And are you expecting there to be just one that would be used internationally or more than one?
Yeah, I mean, so I think I will answer the questions that I know. I think initially the space stations that will replace the International Space Station will be smaller. I don't believe it will be, to start with, the same scale or size as the current International Space Station, which I think is about the size of a football pitch. I think soccer pitch. I think is in your. I think.
I got it.
Yeah. So they will certainly be smaller. Will there be more than one? Yes, I think there will be more than one. That's probably more of an opinion than personal opinion than maybe NASA policy. But I think in the end there would certainly be more than one.
It might not even be owned by NASA based on private industry and the way the JetBlue, or was it
Blue Origin?
Blue Origin, and the Indian one. I slipped my brain as far as what they're all planning on launching a bunch of satellites into the lower orbit as opposed to higher orbits and things of that nature. Any other questions? Let's dig in deeper into this project.
So
who's next?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Paul Marnichek. I'm the Commissioner of Economic Development for the City of Brook Park, and I bring the complete support of Mayor Ed Orcutt for this project. If he was here, I'm betting he would say the road to the next phase of space exploration runs through Northeast Ohio. And to the chairman, your statement about being willing to roll up your sleeves and get your fingers dirty, well, Mr. Drew kind of skipped over it. Why is this in Brook Park? I can shed a little bit of light on that. He was writing about September of 22. Dr. John Sekovic from OAI brought John Vickers to the area just to do a couple informative meetings. He was looking at this, and Mr. Vickers innocently mentions that they're looking for about 12, 13 acres of land. And Mayor Orcutt says, well, we own 17 acres of land nearby. Would you like to go see it? It's just down the road. Fast forward, and to your point, I ended up ruining a pair of shoes because it was September and we went and tropped around on the land that we are now talking about. So that is one of the reasons it's here, is because we were willing immediately to take them to the site and help them envision this transformational project here in Northeast Ohio, here in Brook Park. Advance my slide. So as you can see, just to help you place it, you would pass, you probably flew over this when you came back. When you landed, it is across the street on Aerospace Parkway from NASA Glenn. I'm sorry, from the airport. If you continue to go down Aerospace Parkway, you would be at NASA Glenn's back gate. So it's, like I said, it's 12.8 acres. Best we can tell, it has never been developed, and the city has owned it for, I believe, about 15 years.
Does that touch on Ohio Airspace, where John is located?
No, sir, it's farther down the road from OAI. Farther down the road from OAI. It backs up, Rupel Parkway is what you can kind of see jutting out the bottom left of the picture.
I think
Oh.
you're-
Blue Abyss, the heart of it all. As you can see, this, I feel, speaks to the many different opportunities that this project will bring to the area because of the capabilities we have in the area. For manufacturing, as you mentioned, for innovation, for the colleges and universities that are listed, and of course, for the gem that's been tucked away for 80 years, NASA Glenn. Total capital investment, $250 million. As Mr. Drew mentioned, the average wage for the center jobs, 132 of them, give or take, is just shy of $100,000. And then the hotel would have an average wage of about $70,000. The city does still own 5 acres of land, which is adjacent to this. Also, I have been contacted by a number of owners of private land that is around it that are very interested in what this would mean for them. But also then, as a place, as businesses spin off from NASA Glenn, we would be able to hopefully keep them local as well, find them a place on Aerospace Parkway, on Apollo Drive, on Rupel, Brook Park Road. All of these are great opportunities for these businesses to continue to invest in this area and support our higher education universities. So Kent State did a study. It was concluded in November of 2023, and you can see initially during construction, you're talking about nearly 1,800 jobs, $135 million in increase in local residents' income, total spending impact, $316 million. Skip ahead after 30 years, 21,000 full-time jobs will be created or supported, 1.5 billion in local resident income, and total output increases of $3.6 billion. I know many of you have experience when it comes to local government, and I'm sure you would agree this is something great for the municipality and for the region. It will continue to place us on the map and continue to attract new businesses and keep innovation here in Northeast Ohio. I believe end of my portion if anyone has any questions for me.
Questions? Yes, Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the north side of Brook Park Road, there's those brick buildings there that had been empty for some time, and they were going to build some, I think, high-end apartments or condos across from the driveway to NASA Glenn. Do you know, did those ever get developed? Or is that another piece of property that's in the area that's could be available?
I believe that is another piece of available property that if this goes in, I feel becomes more desirable.
Any other? Do we have, I know you were referencing the jobs for the project, the construction jobs. Are these jobs going to be locally created jobs? Because it just, a pool 150 feet deep, just as a pool, I guess would not think that we would have ordinarily that construction piece here, but maybe we do.
I, having spoken to individuals that are in the trades, they're rather confident they'd be able to.
To dig that hole and pour the concrete and all that kind of stuff?
I'm guessing, I'm speculating, Mayor Orcutt is a card-carrying third-generation member of Pipe Fitters Local 120.
Okay?
And I believe they will have the capabilities, yes.
Okay, and I mean, it's okay if you have to outsource certain
Right.
things. It's, if, it doesn't mean you put the project on hold just because the services are not here locally. I would think that you're looking at a massive amount of concrete wall that has to be supported, and hopefully we have that talent here that could do it. If you can't, then it's got to go outside. The spinoffs that John was alluding to from that location, one of the things that we've, and I'm sure he'll confirm this, sadly, is we've never spun off a single job out of NASA that's landed in Northeastern Ohio. They always seem to go to Alabama, they go to someplace other than here. They don't, if we create a new technology, it never seems to have landed here, no pun intended, as to where the jobs go, sadly. And I know that was one of, he and I, we had a chance to discuss this. Is there anything we can do to help maybe foster that through a secondary fund or anything of that nature, to do economic development that's spins off jobs that would come out of Blue Abyss or come out of NASA as a result of this? Because sadly, they leave and they go to our good friends in Alabama, which are not our good friends on football weekend, but that's all right.
It's true.
That's our football, not your football, sorry.
So one thing also to think about this as a way to help NASA Glenn, because this increased capability of this facility, I feel, would allow NASA Glenn to then be able to undertake more projects. So we're hoping to see a growth. Currently, NASA Glenn, I believe, has about 3,000 employees. We're hoping this will allow NASA Glenn to continue to grow. To your other question about the spinoffs, I'd be happy to, any business that's looking to have that dialogue on land that we have, I'd be happy to have that conversation with them and see if there's something we could do from the local municipality standpoint.
That'd be great, because it would be, that would be great, because John, as you know, was at NASA for a long time, and that was one of his disappointing aspects, is that we couldn't find any way of keeping those jobs here.
Well, hopefully this allows kind of that magic, that the right recipe to be able to be present in this area.
Yeah, I think that's what gets those of us who are in private industry excited, because it says that it doesn't all have to go the government path. It can go to a private industry now that.
And we definitely have the local talent to be able to do it.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah, sure.
Without a
Never
doubt.
doubt on that, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions for anybody? Okay. Was this our last presenter? Oh, no, we got.
Pass the baton to
Yeah,
Mr.
we
Chema.
got the guy who helped design and develop the project we're looking at as we look out our window here. That's right. Without your vision, we wouldn't have the baseball stadium or the our basketball arena.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'll try to be reasonably brief here, but certainly want to
And if you could just state your name for the record before you get started, thank you.
My name is Thomas Chema. I'm with Gateway Consultants Group, a Cleveland consulting firm that has been engaged by Blue Abyss as project manager for this project. Mr. Chairman, I recognize that this is unusual for the council. It's been mentioned a couple of times. You don't usually put first money in, but here is an opportunity for this county grant to be a key enabler for this project. And early dollars in are, if not as important, often more important than the last dollars in. It's easier to find the last dollars, honestly, than it is to find those first dollars. And you're not first dollars. The first dollars were the roughly $1 million which Blue Abyss Holding has invested in the project. The second dollars were a loan that we received to enable us to acquire the land from Brook Park. And just a little more background on that piece. As Mark said, our cost in the land was about $700,000. We have $1 million mortgage on the property because the due diligence to get ready to buy this land was expensive. Digging 6 holes, 200+ feet deep is not inexpensive. We had to have a specialty contractor do that, and there were other environmental concerns that we needed to make sure that we had covered those bases. The $1 million is from a family. We have the mortgage document itself precludes us at this point from identifying that partner, but it is a local family office. And I am sure you would be familiar with the players who made that loan to us. It is a first mortgage. They are anticipating that we will be taking them out relatively early. Certainly within 2 years is our expectation. You would have a second piece. This parcel, this 12 acres, was in 4 separate parcels of land. We have not yet tied them together, but will. Your lien will be at the moment on the totality of those parcels. As Mark said, we are looking at a number of different opportunities relative to the hotel. There could be a developer that would come in and want to lease, probably not buy from us, but lease some part of the land. So I actually don't anticipate that your second piece will be, or second position will be diluted. Your second lien will be on the entirety of the 12 acres. On the books of the county, the land is worth $2.7 million. That's on your tax duplicate. Our comps range from $4.5 million to $7.5 million. So there's a substantial amount of equity in that land. This loan that grant, don't want it to be a loan. No. This grant that we're looking for will enable us to put together an overall pre-development package. The pre-development side of this, before we actually start digging into the ground, will probably cost somewhere near $9 million. And the other pieces of that pre-development funding are going to come from equity, which we are currently pursuing. We had anticipate that there might be as much as $5 million of equity in the pre-development phase. We are also soliciting other grants and expect that we will have another roughly 1.2 million in grants that will come to us, probably from a federal source, but it's premature to say very much more about that. The overall capital stack, and I won't get into great detail, but we anticipate that the city and legislation is being prepared. The city of Brook Park is going to give us an abatement to CRA, and we've been talking about a TIF on top of that. We anticipate overall equity in this project. The total project will be about $34 million. Mark mentioned a PACE loan. I assume you're familiar with that. Because there's so much high-tech and energy component, we believe that we will generate about $35 million worth of qualified equipment and construction for PACE. And then we have a little ace up our sleeves for our senior debt. And this comes back to a question you asked earlier. But the French government, through a corporation which they partially own, is willing to guarantee that part of the debt that we incur on this project to build below grade. Mr. Chairman, as you identified, this is a specialty construction, and there are not a lot of firms out there that do this work. At the moment, we've engaged Gilbane, which has a major Cleveland presence, to be our construction manager. They will in turn have an arrangement with a company called Nicholson, which is a US-based company, has done a lot of work in Northeast Ohio for the NEORSD and digging the tunnels and storage facilities that the sewer district has developed. This company is a subsidiary of a French company, and because the French government is interested in promoting them, they are willing to guarantee a portion of the senior debt on this project. So that helps us dramatically with our capital stack. We're also anticipating, of course, other government grants, primarily from the state of Ohio. The specific uses of the $450,000, which we're asking from you, will be to get our facility design work at least to the schematic design stage so that we can do very serious cost estimates. When we talk about a $250 million project, that is based on comparables. It's not based on this project. We haven't designed this project yet. And until you do an actual design, the costs can fluctuate and sometimes grossly. We don't anticipate that being gross, but we do need to do the exact design. And this grant will help us get to that schematic design phase so that our architects can complete that work. Gilbane can do the cost takedown. That, in turn, is necessary if we're going to complete our capital stack, because the banks and the other lenders are going to want to know specifically what these costs are going to be. A second area that we will use these funds for is our marketing activities. Mark mentioned several times the outreach that we are making to these various commercial entities, to a variety of potential users. We can't build this building and open it up and then decide to start marketing. We need to market now to those end users. Space companies plan 10 years out. Marine plans 4 to 6 years out. So we need to be out there in the market right now, and we need to engage with a variety of marketing activities. Next, we intend to do some preliminary site work. We obviously have to present to the city of Brook Park our plan and get site approval. That needs to be done in the next several months. And that will also potentially include some site clearance. And lastly, none of these things happen without bodies, and we will be engaging a number of consultants to help us with those other activities. So that's how we're going to use the money. It is, as I said, catalytic. I think was actually one of your members' terms, and we think that not only will Blue Abyss be a catalytic economic development project for Northeast Ohio, but your funds will be catalytic to allow us to get this project to the finish line. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Be happy to try to respond to answer questions.
Questions for Mr. Chairman? And if you don't, I'm sure everybody picked up from his consulting name of his company, as far as Gateway, they were, if you don't know the history, Mr. Chairman was very, very much involved with the development of those sites as we look out our window and see them over there from that. And that was, I think, catalytic for sports and development in downtown. So congratulations to you on that project.
Thank you very much.
If this even holds close to that, that would be fantastic. Sadly, I have to ask the tough question on the other side. What would be your definition of substantial completion?
Getting a certificate of occupancy.
Certificate of occupancy. Whoa. Okay, yeah. That's way down the road then. That's
not really. It's 2 years.
Oh, okay. All right. So
okay. Yeah, we'll have a certificate of occupancy. If we keep to the present schedule, we'll do the site work this summer, early third quarter. We would like to get a hole in the ground, beginning the process before winter closes in. That really means dealing with trees on the site, dealing with water. There's some wetlands on this site which we have to mitigate. So we would like to get that done before the end of the year. And then our construction period, assuming we are doing design while these other things are going on, if we can get in the ground the beginning of late first quarter, early second quarter of 25, we will make a mid-26 completion date. And certificate of occupancy usually comes roughly certainly within a month of your actually opening up.
And I know you're somebody who looks at multiple different things out there that could come to haunt a project of this nature environmentally. Are there any groups out there that you think that you've identified that potentially could come back and challenge them? Then sometimes they can slow a project down as there's no animals in the wetlands that have been alluded to, or
No.
anybody that's going to, they have to divert the wetlands to some other secondary purpose that can't be used.
The wetlands are not high-grade wetlands, and we will have to mitigate, we will have to acquire some wetlands to substitute for the
Right, that's
wetlands
what I'm
we're
talking about.
destroying.
But there's nothing.
There's
no
nothing
snail
high level.
darter or
No, there's no-
snail
nothing-
darters or what are some of the other ones that they got shut down over.
Yeah, snail darter. Well,
Yes, yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Chairman, I did a project out in the desert in California, in Indian Wells, California. And we had to deal with a fringe-toed lizard, not a single one of which had been seen since the Great Depression. But in that project, because of the kinds of groups that you mentioned, we ended up having to put in escrow, some $350,000, to take care of the fringe-toed lizard if one ever appeared. This project was a tennis stadium project in Indian Wells, California. To my knowledge, we completed that in 98 or 99. To my knowledge, they still haven't seen a fringe-toed lizard, but that money is still sitting there.
They're still sitting
just
on your
in
money,
case.
huh?
Yeah. But no, we don't anticipate
Don't
anything like
confuse
that.
facts with theory,
Right,
theory.
exactly. We've actually even looked at the archaeological issues to see if there was any problem that could come up there. You know, when we were doing Jacobs Field and Gundurina, we did an urban archaeological dig to see if there were any important artifacts that ought to be saved. We didn't find any important ones, but you still can see a bench that's in the just off the main plaza area. The two Cleveland artists did, Angelica Posa and I forget the other lady's name. They took some of the things we did find in our dig and put them in plaster right in this bench. But they were not things that stopped our project from moving forward.
Well, good. I just didn't know if there was a group that you have any concerns about that is, because you always, in the closed door, you think of the what ifs, the what ifs, the what ifs.
Yes.
And I'm not asking you to tell us, because I don't want to stimulate that group to come out and
Right.
find you.
We don't know of any at this point.
Okay, all right, good. Any other questions for anybody? I think pretty exciting from that standpoint. So you're getting close to defining what substantial completion would mean for as far as from our standpoint. You being an economic development person with a background, it's now 2 years plus, and we've not hit that target. And the last thing you want is anybody exercising any kind of recovery of their funds at that
Right.
point in time.
Yeah.
Do you envision that it's now 3 years or 4 years because something has slowed the process down, and unbeknownst to us, that this would flip to a loan at any point along the way if we get way past substantial completion and where the project is still not close?
I think that the company could certainly be flexible to allow for that to happen if that eventuality
It just seems like it's a logical thing after we get certain period past that if this project can't get completed, that it would be like anybody else, that it should flip to that. And I think that I would just suggest that our Department of Development ought to build that contingency in there. And I'm not trying to be tough on it, just say, okay, let's move it way past substantial completion
Yep.
and say, okay, at some point, it should operate like anybody else. We should get our money back if this project never goes forward from that
Absolutely.
standpoint.
I don't see that as a problem.
Well,
And the
good.
project is going forward.
I have all the confidence in the world. I've watched you through your life develop that, and that project went forward across the street, so there's no reason to think that this one will not also, and I think this is every bit as transformational. Any other questions for anybody?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that concludes our presentation.
Great, okay. Any discussion here at this point in time? The chair will move that this could, is there any, let's ask a timing question. Is there a timing question on this? Can this go through 3 readings? I assume it can. Okay, well, that's why I'm asking the question before we put this on the floor. Is there, now I'm asking the Department of Development, are you in agreement to that? Okay, all right, then the chair will move to change what I was about ready to suggest. The chair moved that this be approved and come out for full committee for second reading suspension under the rules. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of this coming out for second reading suspension of the next meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? This will be therefore at our next full council meeting for second reading suspension for approval. That'll be the fastest money you'll probably get in your pot, I think. Thank you very much. Let's see, is there any other matters coming for us for today? Hearing none? Adjourn the meeting? Oh, I don't like this. Let's turn that sounds much better.